We have 24 people who has participated in this poll. So we will wait another 2 minutes, then we will start with today's event. For people who has just joined, again, my name is Krisnuba Sinha. I'm the Initiative Communication Manager for both WEE-DiFine and WeConnect. And while we wait for others to join, we'll just take I'll request everyone to actually participate in this poll, and we will start shortly in about a minute. All right, we have 71% of people who has participated. Thank you so much for participating in this little icebreaker activity that we have. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed speaker for this evening, Kim Ko. Kim serves as the initiative director for both WEE-DiFine and WeConnect, and her expertise in this field is truly unparalleled. Without a doubt, we are here for an enlightening and inspiring presentation. Please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Kim Ko.
Hey, Kasnuba. I hope I'm audible. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. It's great to be with you. As Tasnuba mentioned, my name is Kim Cole. I'm the director of WEE-DiFine and WeConnect at VIGD, and I'm excited to be with you today. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we'll just dive into the presentation I have prepared. All right, so welcome everyone once again. We're really excited for today. WEE-DiFine will officially be launching our 4th request for proposals. So today I'll be sharing a little bit of background on WEE-DiFine as well as our latest RFP. I know many of you are already quite familiar with WEE-DiFine. We have been operating for about 3.5 years, and of course, this is our 4th request for proposals. But in case you're new to our work, I will share a bit of background. So the WEE-DiFine initiative aims to generate a comprehensive body of evidence regarding the impact of digital financial services on women's economic empowerment. And specifically, we finance rigorous research projects that investigate the causal mechanisms at play between these two components. And we have a specific geographical focus on South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. There are a few components that make us a bit different. Of course, we are an initiative of the BRAC Institute of Governance and Development, which is based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. So we are an initiative that is based in the Global South. Another component that makes us a bit different is we strive to help teams prepare competitive proposals. We develop a variety of resources to really aim to be as transparent as possible about what we're looking for in a competitive proposal. An additional mandate that we have is to seek to level the competitive playing field for academics that are often excluded from the competitive funding process, specifically academics from our countries of focus, female academics, and early career academics. And at each stage in our proposal reviews process, we try to integrate this mandate, and we are always open to additional ideas, suggestions, partners for how we can do this better. And finally, I'll note that we prized mixed methods research. We, of course, finance quantitative studies, including but not exclusive to RCTs, but we also finance rigorous qualitative research, both as add-ons to existing quantitative studies and as standalone or formative studies. So we're really excited to note that we have some very awesome anthropological studies in our portfolio, and we're really looking forward to continuing to build out our qualitative portfolio. As I mentioned, we've been operating for 3.5 years, and we currently have a portfolio of 19 funded studies that are in 9 countries across South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. We've committed $1.8 million to these studies to date, and of course, we're planning to grow that number. And so far, our awards range in value from $15,000 up to $360,000. If you are new to WEE-DiFine, I definitely recommend checking out our initiative white paper available on our website, which goes into explicit detail about the causal mechanisms that we are interested in supporting. But just to share a little bit of background, the 4 most commonly addressed thematic areas in our portfolio to date include behavioral influence, women's bargaining power, women's ability to enact their own preferences, as well as women's access to digital non-financial services. So at present, we have a pretty robust portfolio that examines these 4 causal mechanisms. We also do see trends with regard to the nature of interventions that are evaluated in our portfolio. So to date, we do have 5 studies that rigorously evaluate interventions related to digital financial services coaching, training, or technical assistance. We also have 5 projects that evaluate the impact of digital savings products, 3 that evaluate digital insurance products, and 3 studies that evaluate smartphone distribution programs. We're especially excited about this last one. As you may know, we have recently launched the WeConnect initiative, which evaluates women's access to digital information. And I'll share a little bit more about that later in my presentation. We also track specifically 5 metrics to see how we're doing with regard to our additional mandates. So we are happy to share that just short of 80% of our funded studies do include a female academic. 58% do include an academic from the study's country of focus. About 3/4 include an early career academic, and 42% of the institutions that actually receive the grant funds are based in the Global South. And this last statistic I'm particularly excited about. 58% of the proposals that were selected for funding in our 2nd and 3rd RFPs were actually resubmissions to WEE-DiFine. One of the most frequently asked questions we receive is if a study isn't selected for funding during its first submission, can it still compete in subsequent submissions, subsequent cycles? And I think this statistic very directly says absolutely yes. We do share feedback following our RFPs with unsuccessful submissions, and we love to see resubmissions. So I think this statistic really speaks to the fact that we are interested in seeing resubmitted studies. Of course, today we are launching our 4th RFP. You will find all relevant materials available on our website today. And just in case you're new to WEE-DiFine, I'll share a little bit about our funding opportunities in detail. So we will be offering both our large grants and small grants this cycle. Our greenfield evaluations are available for funding up to $500,000, and extensions to existing quantitative studies up to $200,000. Our small grants category, there are 4 specific study types under our small grants, all valued up to $50,000. We support measurement experiments that evaluate new ways to quantitatively measure women's economic empowerment. Qualitative studies as either extensions to existing quantitative studies or as standalone or formative research. And finally, we do finance pilot studies, specifically pilots for RCTs or large-scale quant studies. I will also note that teams are welcome to combine across these categories. For example, a team is welcome to submit a proposal for a greenfield evaluation as well as a qualitative extension, for example, valued up to $550,000. And you can submit that in a single proposal. Our submission deadline for this cycle is May 14th, and the deadline is 11:59 p.m. Bangladesh Standard Time. Our portal will close at midnight. Please do make sure to double check the conversion, the time zone conversion. So GMT time, that is right before 6 p.m. Eastern, right before 2 p.m. Please be sure to mark your calendars because unfortunately we're not able to accept late submissions. So please do mark your calendars for that deadline. We also have preferred criteria that we are associating with this cycle. And our preferred criteria are just some qualities that we would really like and prefer to see in a proposal. These are not binding, they are not required, and submissions that include these criteria do not automatically receive increased points. But these are criteria that we call out specifically as our preference, both to the public today, as well as in our reviews process. So just some food for thought. This is what we would really like to see, in case you're wondering. So the first criteria that we examine is team composition. So we do prefer to see that research teams include an academic from the country of focus in a meaningful and robust capacity. And we also prefer to see gender diversity on our research teams. Second, this RFP, since it's our fourth, is really intended to shore up gaps in our portfolio to date. So I've shared already causal mechanisms that are pretty robustly represented in our portfolio. And today I'm sharing with you three that we are really looking to address in this cycle. Those include the causal mechanisms of safety, systematic discrimination against women, and women's breadth of support network. And I'll share another plug for our WEE-DiFine white paper, which goes into much more detail regarding these mechanisms and the existing literature on these mechanisms to date. And finally, we are looking for interventions that have the specific potential to be scaled up if proven successful. For those of you who are familiar with our work, I will share with you what is new since our last cycle of funding. Of course, our first update is that we now are offering a second funding opportunity through WEE-Connect. WEE-Connect rigorously supports research examining women's access to digital information. And that RFP is live. We officially launched WEE-Connect 2 weeks ago. And you are welcome to check out our website. We do have the webinar launch available on YouTube. So please do check it out. But the main takeaway is we actually have 2 times the funding opportunities available to teams this spring. So WEE-Connect is very similar in structure and scope to WEE-DiFine, but has some important differences. So definitely we recommend checking out the WEE-Connect funding page if you haven't already. Second, we do have firmer timelines for revised submissions and contract finalization this cycle. We have specific timelines delineated in our RFP documents, but we are really looking to finalize our contracted studies and really get them off the ground in a timely manner. And finally, we do have some new contractual requirements for studies that will be funded this cycle. The first one is we are going to integrate a new deliverable into our awards. We are going to be requesting a contract with any implementation partner as relevant. Secondarily, we are requesting that data collection launch within 6 months of the contract being fully executed. And finally, we're asking that projects plan to conclude by July 31st, 2026. And when I say conclude, I specifically mean that all field work is wrapped up, that final technical and financial reports are submitted. This does not necessarily apply to draft working papers or policy briefs, however. Of course, we're also excited to share a variety of resources with you associated with this funding cycle. We are once again bringing to you office hours. Office hours are a 2-hour block of time that are pretty informal. They're a space where teams can drop in on an informal basis and ask us questions in a group setting. We have 5 different offerings this cycle that are themed. But you're also, if you have a question that doesn't necessarily match the theme, you're also welcome to jump in on any given date. We are asking that teams email us with questions in advance, just so that we can be as prepared as possible. But you're also welcome to just jump on the line and ask us in the moment if you have any questions. Next, we are also offering one-on-one coaching calls. We have both technical calls for quant and qualitative studies, as well as budget calls. This cycle, we are requesting that teams submit an expression of interest for these calls for a couple of reasons. One, we have limited team capacity, so we have a limited number of calls that we're able to offer. And 2, we're asking for some information upfront this cycle so that we can be as prepared as possible during these coaching calls. And the intention here is that these calls are really much more in-depth, detailed one-on-one sessions with members of our team, either on technical, methodological matters, or with regard to budget calls, I will actually be reviewing draft budgets with the eyes of a formal financial review. So you will get feedback on your draft budget before you submit it. So it's an awesome opportunity to really get in-depth, detailed feedback before you have to submit the proposal. In finality, please do take advantage of this. I will note that we haven't had any expressions of interest submitted so far. So I'm really hoping that people do take advantage of these calls, largely because we really love to speak with you and I love talking to people about budgets. So please do take advantage of this. We would love to chat with you in a coaching call. Next, for the first time, we will be bringing to you a live proposal development workshop in Dhaka. This is primarily geared toward teams that are already based in Dhaka. But if you would like to join us in Dhaka, if you're based internationally, you're welcome to do so. We will also be sending around an application form for this offering to make sure that we're able to tailor our content to our teams as efficiently as possible. I will also note that this is a live offering only. We're not able to offer a hybrid component, unfortunately, but we are treating this sort of as a pilot offering, and we're hoping to be able to scale this in the future. Next, of course, we have a variety of online resources on our website. This includes everything from video tutorials on common mistakes to even a sample budget. So please do check out what we have available online. We try to make these resources as efficient and tailored to the needs of our teams as possible. And finally, this cycle, we're happy to be able to provide feedback to all studies, irrespective of how far they have advanced in our cycle. And again, this really speaks to the fact that we aim to be as transparent as possible. And we're really hoping that this feedback is helpful for teams who wish to resubmit to one of our initiatives in the future or to another funding initiative. Lastly, I'll note that these resources will be shared with our WEE-Connect RFP. You may have noticed that we are the same team primarily, and there's a lot of overlap between the two initiatives. So you do not have to know whether you plan to submit to WEE-Connect or WEE-DiFine to take advantage of these resources. We are expecting a lot of questions on which initiative will be the better fit for your proposal. So please do feel free to join, even if you're unsure which initiative you're more interested in at this time. I also have some pro tips to share with you today. These are insider tips from our team that are really just information to help teams prepare competitive proposals. The first pro tip is please do include a strong letter from any implementation partner that you plan to work with. Of course, you probably already know that we ask for a letter in your proposal submission, but what I mean by a strong letter is a bit more specific. We often see delays and challenges in commission studies associated with misunderstandings with any implementation partner, especially if the study has a randomized design. So we are looking for letters that have a really explicit statement of the scope of work and implications, particularly of any randomization, to ensure that all partners are on the same page from the beginning. Second, please do carefully consider whether your proposal is a better fit for WEE-DiFine or for WEE-Connect on thematic grounds. We are only going to permit a given proposal to be submitted to one of the two initiatives. We can't, unfortunately, allow the same proposal to be submitted to both initiatives. So please make sure that you're selecting the one that is the best thematic fit for your study. As I mentioned, we are here to help you do so and help answer any questions that may arise to this effect. And finally, do keep in mind the gaps that we have in our portfolio. I've already called out the thematic gaps that we have, but if you check out our website, you will probably also see a few additional gaps in terms of geographic focus, for one. We currently do not have any studies based in Southeast Asia, primarily. And there are a couple of additional geographies that we're excited about but haven't commissioned studies in yet. And the one country that comes to mind at this point in time for me is Pakistan. And finally, study type. If you check out our website, you will probably see that a variety of categories are robustly represented. But one which is not to date is measurement studies. We've been really excited to be able to offer funding for measurement studies, but we don't have very many in our portfolio to date. So this is a pro tip. If you're interested in submitting a proposal for a measurement study, I'm just flagging that we're really interested in seeing more of these in our portfolio moving forward. I have some additional pro tips as well. These are more general, so hopefully they're helpful, but if not, my apologies. But firstly, we do recommend reviewing the project profiles and the blogs on our website for existing studies to really give you a sense of the types of studies that we have financed in the past, as well as the outputs that these studies have generated. We really do have a lot of content on there that's really exciting. So even if you're just interested in learning more about what we're learning from our studies, please do check out our blogs in particular. Next, please do decide early if you'd like to take advantage of our coaching call opportunities. This is for a couple reasons. We do have a limited bandwidth on our team, as I mentioned. And two, we are requesting that teams submit an expression of interest or a draft budget. Of course, these take some time to prepare. So please do decide early if you'd like to take advantage of this opportunity. These are really geared toward teams that have, as I mentioned, a pretty solid concept in place or a draft budget. And finally, just a general tip, and this is something that I really learned to do being on the other side of proposals, being a writer of proposals and being so close to the idea. We definitely recommend that a colleague review your proposal just to identify areas that might not be clear or could be more concise. And that's largely because, you know, as proposal writers, we are so close to the topic that sometimes we miss areas that could be articulated more clearly or in more plain language. And I flag this because a common trend that we do see is certain elements of proposals are unclear to certain reviewers or our advisory board. So it's always helpful to have a colleague who's not super close to the proposal to just do a quick run through. That is all the content that I have prepared for you today. We have an ample amount of time for any and all questions that you may have. And of course, you are always welcome to ask us questions at our institutional account. You can email me directly as well, and you can drop in office hours. So I'll pause there and I'll jump over to the chat. If you have a question, please do drop it in the chat and I'll take a look. I'm not seeing any question. Oh, there we go. Okay. Sveva says, could you tell us a bit more about the studies you have already funded? Sure. So we have 19 studies funded exclusively in the context of South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. We have a pretty solid split between quantitative and qualitative. We do have a measurement study as well. If you have a specific question on the portfolio, I could probably answer more directly. But that's the gist of kind of what our portfolio looks like. I went into detail about the types of interventions that are most frequently evaluated. But we also have blogs that go into much more detail about what our portfolio looks like to date. I hope that's helpful. Farzana, how many applications are allowed from one institution? Great question. You are permitted to submit as many applications as you want from a given institution, from a given email account. There's no limit on the number of different proposals that you can submit. The only constraint is we ask that a given proposal, an identical proposal, is not submitted to both WEE-Connect and WEE-Define. Sonia asks, can you say more about who is eligible to be a PI? Must there be a university affiliation or a credential? Yeah, that's a great question. There does not have to be a university affiliation necessarily. What I will say is most commonly PIs hold a doctorate in a relevant, relevant discipline for their study, of course. Many are associated with universities, many are not. Many are also associated with NGOs, multilaterals, as well as private companies. So on each of our study profiles, we do mention the PIs, so you can kind of take a look at who has been on those teams in the past. I will also say that I mentioned we're eager to support early career researchers. This includes doctoral students. But I mean, it's really honestly, it's up to the research team regarding who they think is the best fit to be on their team. And we leave that up to you. I hope that's helpful. Evan, does your support cover East African countries, specifically Kenya? Yes, it absolutely does. We have quite a few studies in Kenya at the moment, I believe 3. But we also have on our FAQs document a comprehensive list of which countries we are able to support studies in. All right, one more question from Sonia. You mentioned the requirement of a contract with implementing partners. Must that be in place before applying for the funding? Great question. It does not have to be in place. This is an early stage deliverable for studies that do receive funding. So certainly not, the contract doesn't have to be in place at the time of submission. We just ask for a letter from the implementation partner expressing their interest to be associated with a study, should funding come through. Aftab asks, we already have an ongoing study funded through WEE-DiFine. Awesome. Can we apply for some additional funding? Yes, you absolutely can. If you what I'm not clear on is if you mean as top-up funding to your existing study or as an entirely different proposal. But in both cases, the response is yes, you can. Simeon asks, are scholars from Africa eligible for the funding? Absolutely. We strongly encourage academics that are from the countries that we operate research in to apply to both WEE-DiFine and WEE-Connect. That is a huge priority of ours. So yes, please do. Next question, Eric asks, the PI should come from an academic background. Can you clarify whether this excludes independent consultancies or research outfits that are not in the academic field in their nature of operations? Yeah, great question. This does not exclude independent consultants or research outfits. We really don't have, firm criteria around who can and cannot be a PI. I will say that we do request CVs. So in our reviews process, reviewers and our advisory board will look at the credentials of the PI. And really, the intent is just to ensure that the research team is equipped to execute the scope of work proposed. Many of our funded studies actually are conducted by research institutions that are not associated with a university. But in terms of an independent consultant as an individual, we recommend not applying as an individual academic unaffiliated with an organization or institution. And this is largely because we have very specific contractual requirements for our awards that are unlikely to be able to be met if the funding is not going directly to an institution. I hope that helps answer your question. Farzana asks, can one PI submit 2 applications, or can she be a co-PI to another application? Yes, on all fronts. You absolutely can submit multiple applications, and you can also be a part of multiple teams. That's, yes, absolutely. Nadia asks, can you say a bit more about your interest in measurement studies? Is this more related to collecting new types of indicators or new methods or something else? Great question, Nadia. We are specifically interested in new ways to robustly measure women's economic empowerment as an index. So looking at the same indicator, but new ways of measuring it more robustly as relevant to your particular context. I hope that helps answer your question. Manglika asks, what if there is no separate implementation agency? So there are certain study types where an implementing partner isn't relevant. In that case, you do not need to meet our requirements for an implementing partner. In the case of a quantitative study, I mean, there are only very specific categories where an implementing agency won't be relevant. So if you're looking for our greenfield category, for example, you really would need to be robustly evaluating an intervention. The only other thing that I could think of that might be a gray area is there are some circumstances in which, say, the data collection firm will execute the intervention. But a big question that would arise is whether that type of intervention has the potential to scale. I hope that answers your question, but please feel free to ask follow-up questions if needed. Morgan asks, do the greenfield studies require existing pilots of the research methodology or the interventions being studied, or both? That's a great question. The short answer is no, there is no requirement, but I will say that a greenfield is very unlikely to be successfully accepted for funding if there is not very robust proof of concept. So in all likelihood, this will look like a pilot study that has already been completed. With regard to research methodology or intervention, I think I'd probably need to know the specific case to be able to answer that in a helpful way. But we do recommend that greenfield applications have a pilot under their belts. And if not, then your idea may be a really strong contender for our pilot category. And I will also note that we look very intentionally at our pilot studies for the possibility to be scaled up for our greenfield funding. So, Nadia asks, to what extent can budgets be used for implementation costs of a project being evaluated as part of the research? That's a really great question. So we do have specific, I will say, requests around financing requested for the intervention. That is stipulated on our website in our budget guidelines. But as a summary, we ask that no more than 10% of the project budget be associated with implementation costs. And that's really because our funding is for research purposes. So we do take requests for implementation costs into account, but we do, we really are looking to finance research. So we do, request that teams really seek funding externally if needed to support the intervention. Mariam asked, do you support qualitative studies that are extensions to existing studies? Yes, in the sense that we have a specific funding category for qualitative studies that are complementary to existing quantitative studies. That's one of our categories. Secondarily, we do support studies that are purely qualitative in nature. If you're asking about extensions to existing qualitative studies, we actually haven't had a proposal submitted in that regard, but we are open to it, but I will say that would fall under our qualitative bucket of funding valued at up to $50,000. So our extension funding category valued at up to $200,000 is specifically for quantitative studies. I hope that helps. All right. One more question. Morgan asks, will the measurement study also need to speak to the WEE-DiFine mechanisms of interest? Does the digital connectivity component need to be part of the index? That's a really good question. I think I might need to understand in a little bit more detail the specific context and study to be able to be helpful. We do require a digital financial services component. It needs to be, a study that's relevant and speaks to the potential of DFS to impact WE. But whether it's part of the index, I think, is an interesting question. I would say no, because we're really looking at indices that robustly measure women's economic empowerment. But I can think of some examples where my answer might be a little bit different. So I'd probably need to understand and more nuance the context, Morgan, if that helps. I'm happy to chat via call, or our coaching calls would actually be a great avenue for that as well, or our office hours, where you can speak to one of our colleagues who is a research fellow and is much more academically qualified to respond to that question than I am. All right. Are there any other questions? Caroline asked, do you accept proposals submitted by a research team from different organizations, but one organization is the lead? Oh, that's interesting. Like a consortium model, I guess. We have not seen that before, to be honest. What I will say is, so our awards are set up so that funding must be issued to just one institution, but it is completely in the hands of that institution to sub-award. So what we commonly see is that an award goes to for example, a university who then subawards to a data collection firm. That is a really, really common model, but we might need to, this might be another one where some more context might change my answer a little bit, Caroline, sorry to be particular, but in most cases, I think it would probably have to be a subprime relationship, if that makes sense. Any other questions? All right, these are great questions. You're keeping me on my toes. Oh, one more. Okay. Lafayette S, can we get the PowerPoint? Absolutely. This presentation is recorded and will be uploaded on our website. So it does take us a few days to kind of format that and get it online, but yes, you will have access. B, is there any specific format of submitting the proposal? Yes, there is. We have a very specific requested format that is detailed in our RFP package online. So you'll see our RFP guidelines, which explains all different components of the submission. And then we also have a template that outlines what we'd like to see, how we'd like to see the proposal structured. And it's pretty specific, hopefully in a helpful way. C, would you allow consortium? Yeah, so I think that kind of gets back to the prior question. I think I would need to understand in more detail the nature of the consortium, because the way our grants are structured, we're only able to issue funding for a given award to one institution. So if your consortium is structured so that there's, you know, a prime award recipient and like subs, that's fine, and we have contractual language to allow for that. That's actually the relationship we usually see on our awards. But what we wouldn't be able to do, for example, is split an award for a given proposal between two institutions, if that makes sense. Happy to chat about that more as well. I will be on all the office hours. So even if an office hour is branded as, say, a technical one, I'll still be there. You can definitely hop online and we can chat in more detail. Sadia asks, have you been receiving proposals from Pakistan in response to the RFP calls? We have received proposals from Pakistan. We have. We currently don't have any funded studies from Pakistan in our portfolio. I will also make a short plug for our upcoming office hours. Our first session will be on the 11th, March 11th. That is at 7 to 9 p.m. Bangladesh time. So please do join those office hours. We will have multiple different team members on the line to answer your questions. That will include myself as well as 2 to 3 technical experts on both qual and quant methods. So you'll be in really good hands. You're welcome to jump on the line and ask us anything on your mind. And it's a great avenue to get into more detail about your specific study and context. Last call for questions. All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. It's always great to interact with you. As I mentioned, we love to hear from you. Please feel free at any point to email me directly. You can also email our institutional accounts. I really hope to see you at office hours, and please do apply for a coaching call. I'm a finance nerd, so I love going through budgets with teams. Really hoping to do that with you if you'd like to avail that resource. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day and hope to interact with you soon.